Hello, fellow PCPs and Republicans. My name is Carrie McQuiston, and it's an honor for me to be here today to present this video in defense of, frankly, a man who should not have to be defending himself. So if you don't know Oregon's National Committeeman to the RNC, Solomon Yu, he's 10th in seniority among the 168 at the RNC. He's considered an international powerhouse, national expert on China policy and the China threat to the United States. One of the most amazing things he did was last year, he authored, whipped, and saw passed at the RNC level a resolution condemning China and asking for restitutions, which you may have heard President Trump actually refer to the tenets of during several of his speeches. That resolution that Solomon authored could potentially become presidential administrative policy if we get a Republican in office in 2024. One of the other amazing things that he did was in January during the RNC chair election, and as you probably all remember, that was fairly contentious. But overwhelmingly, the PCPs across Oregon reached out to him, grassroots Republican voters reached out to him, and they all asked to please vote with the grassroots, not the establishment, and vote for Harmeet Dillon. And he did what he is supposed to do. He represented the grassroots. He protected the grassroots. He followed their wishes. And then something else wonderful happened, which was on April 14th. Solomon and I flew to Indianapolis, where we were able to meet with President Trump himself and secure directly from the president an agreement to have a rally in Oregon. Oregon is not forgotten, folks. I mean, this was very good news. Now, you can imagine what someone like Solomon, an America First, anti-CCP patriot, you can imagine the kind of political enemies that he's collected over the years. And so it's pretty interesting that 4 days after that meeting with President Trump, 4 days, we happened to go online and found a 37-page pile of garbage, honestly. It was a recall petition wanting to remove Solomon from his position as National Committeeman. Now, the first two people I saw circulating that petition were not registered Republicans. They came from outside the party. That should be a red flag to everyone who's watching this. But they were working with some PCPs within Oregon, within the ORP. Most of those PCPs had been here maybe 18 months, 2 years in their positions. They were not present. They did not see, did not hear, were not there for any of the events that they are putting forth as allegations. They've had opportunities over the last few months to talk with Solomon many times, to ask him questions, but they chose not to. Not one single question if they had a concern. And you have to question the timing of this. This came right after that meeting. This petition came right as ballots dropped during an election, and it came right as we are gearing up to get into the 2024 presidential election cycle, which is absolutely critical to preserving our republic. So we think, when the truth is on your side, it's pretty easy. The truth resonates with a certain energy that comes across in video, it comes across in person. And so we decided to get the people who had actually seen the events that these allegations surround and go page by page, allegation by allegation, to prove these for the false statements that they are. Take a look.
Hi, my name is David Bossie, and I'm president of Citizens United. In 2016, I had the distinct pleasure of serving as the deputy campaign manager for President Trump's winning presidential campaign. And after that, I served as the deputy director of the Trump-Pence presidential transition team. Now, I also serve as the national committeeman from Maryland. And in that position, I've had the pleasure of working with RNC members all across the country. None more effective than your national committeeman, Solomon Yu. Solomon is a conservative patriot who has served on the resolutions committee for many years. And without Solomon, I would not have been able to pass the censure resolution of Liz Cheney. And in that position, Solomon has led on the RNC to make sure that we hold China accountable for COVID. Okay, this is an important position that Solomon has, and he has done an exemplary job. He also serves as a member of the Presidential Debate Committee, a committee in which I chair, and Solomon does an amazing job on it. Solomon also personally asked President Trump just recently to come to Oregon to fight for Oregon during his presidential campaign, and President Trump has agreed to do so. Solomon is a serious, thoughtful, and hard-working member of the Republican National Committee, and Oregon could not be prouder to have him represent you. If you care about the conservative movement, if you care about having a warrior on the RNC, a fighter for everything we hold dear, then please ignore the negative and nasty accusations and send Solomon Yu back to the RNC. Thank you.
I'm Harmeet Dillon, the Republican National Committee woman from California. My friend Solomon Yu, the National Committeeman in Oregon, is facing an unprecedented recall effort more than 3 years into his 4-year term as National Committeeman. Solomon has been a fierce advocate for reform and improvements at the Republican National Committee, and this has rubbed some people who like the status quo the wrong way. Unfortunately, folks in Oregon are using petty internal squabbles in this effort to distract from the mission of the Oregon GOP to put all this energy behind recalling a sitting National Committeeman. I think this is terribly unfortunate, and it sets a terrible precedent for the needed unity that our party is sorely craving at this time. We have to be united to defeat Democrats, not sniping at one another. I urge Oregon Republicans to stay the course and defeat this unfortunate recall effort and focus their efforts on defeating Democrats in this year and next year and in the future. There'll be an election in due course next year for the National Committeeman and Committeewoman, and that'll be the appropriate time to consider who should best represent Oregon at the Republican National Committee. Thank you for your attention to this effort.
Hi, this is Randy Pullen. I understand the recall petition for Solomon Yu is citing my letter to June Hartley. Unfortunately, I was not contacted ahead of time to explain the meaning of my letter, and it is not being properly explained. Solomon did not lie about June by saying she supported my resolution on illegal immigration. June told him she supported my resolution, but she argued against it during the RNC Resolution Committee hearing. She told the committee that illegal farm workers are good people. Some are working on her farm. One of them was in jail for driving without insurance when involved in an auto accident. I have been serving as Republicans' overseas treasurer and working with Solomon to bring overseas voters to elect Republicans for many years. I know Solomon's integrity, otherwise I wouldn't be treasurer. Solomon has served Oregon well as the National Committeeman, and I support his continued service. Thank you.
Members of the Oregon Republican Party Central Committee, thank you for giving me a chance to address you. My name is Russ Walker. Many of you know me. I served as vice chairman of the state party from 2005 to 2010. I've served as a PCP in Marion County off and on for the last 25 years. I've served as a representative from the state of Oregon to the National Convention several times, and several times I served on the platform committee as the representative from the state of Oregon. I was tasked in 2016 to serve Donald Trump and his campaign as the co-chair of the Government Reform Committee, the same committee that ensured that the Build the Wall language was in the platform. I also served as a senior political advisor to U.S. Senator Mike Lee, who's arguably one of the most conservative U.S. senators in the Senate. Also served as a senior policy advisor for many of the conservative think tanks in the country, State Policy Network, Freedom Works, worked with Club for Growth, the James Madison Institute, and others. I also served in 2015 to 16 as a senior advisor to Ben Carson's presidential campaign. And then in 2016, that same year, I was chosen by the Trump campaign to serve as a floor whip at the convention for the campaign. In 2020, I was asked to serve as a senior advisor to the Trump campaign, did a lot of things for him, One of the things I did was I went down to Arizona and was a senior advisor to the war room and with the election day operations, where we documented the fraudulent activity that occurred down in Arizona. I was there for a couple months. I've known and served very closely with Solomon Yu for the last 25 years. He is a great asset to the state of Oregon, and he is a true conservative. As Oregon National Committee member, Solomon Yu has been a tireless advocate for conservatives in the state of Oregon and for the state of Oregon in Washington, D.C. and within the RNC. Let me give you an example. In 2008, after the election, Solomon recognized that the RNC needed a conservative caucus. He organized that caucus with a handful of other RNC members around the country. And today that caucus works to move conservative principles within the RNC and make sure that the RNC stays to its conservative roots. Let me share a couple other things, though, that I think most people don't know about Solomon. In 2016, Solomon Yu worked behind the scenes to prevent the two factions that were trying to rob Donald Trump of his delegates, the Ted Cruz faction and then the Reince Priebus, Paul Ryan faction. Solomon organized inside the Rules Committee the effort to block the efforts by both of those factions to change the rules so they could undermine the grassroots. I know this because I was there with Solomon. Without Solomon, that would not have happened. The second thing I want to share with you is that I was there serving as the vice chairman of the state of Oregon when Bob Tiernan was the chairman of the state of Oregon. And there's been a mischaracterization of Solomon's efforts to unseat Michael Steele. Some of you know Michael Steele. Michael Steele was the chair of the RNC at the time. He is a center-left Republican. He is often on CNN and other mainstream media outlets bashing on Republicans and bashing on Trump. Bob Tiernan was his attack dog and worked inside the RNC to achieve whatever goals Michael Steele wanted. After Solomon worked with other RNC members to get a conservative elected as the chairman of the RNC, Bob Tiernan came back home and ran against Solomon in an effort to become the national committeeman from Oregon. He was defeated by Solomon. So there's a lot to this, and I'm happy to talk to anybody offline about it. Finally, and this is something, a lot of what Solomon does is behind the scenes and nobody ever sees. In 2019 and 2020, I worked with the Klamath Basin farmers. Many of you know that for more than 25 years, the Klamath Basin farmers have been fighting for their water rights. They've been dealing with federal regulators, with fish rules, and then, of course, tribal claims to the water as well. It's been an ongoing fight for a long time. We were having difficulty getting attention to the plight of the Klamath farmers with the Trump administration. Solomon, I picked up the phone, I called Solomon, and within 24 hours, he had the letter from the farmers and all the information placed on the desk of the President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows. That would not have happened without Solomon. And that happened primarily because of the relationships that Solomon has cultivated and built over the last 25 years. Those are the kinds of things that often people don't know that Solomon does behind the scenes. So I'm going to conclude this now. I want to just say a couple things. First, don't fall for the lies. Solomon is a great asset for the state of Oregon. He is a true conservative. I've worked with him for the last 25 years. I can tell you story after story after story of where Solomon stood up and was principled when people were fighting to undermine the principles that we all believe in, the conservative principles we all believe in. And secondly, feel free to reach out to me on social media, or if you have my phone number, call me or email me. I'm happy to talk to any of you about this and about this fight. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Regina Jackson and I'm the chairwoman for the Klamath County Republicans. I'd like to talk to you about the petition to recall National Committeeman Solomon Yu, in particular the section where he is said to have undermined National Committeewoman Tracy Honnell. January 29th of this year, I wrote from my own computer a resolution to have Tracy Honnell censured for her vote for RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel, against the wishes of rural Oregonians. I wrote that from my own computer without any pressure from Solomon Yu, without any advice, and he certainly didn't write it himself. It's easily traced back to my computer here at home. On January 30th, I asked for the ORP secretary to share it. It was not shared. I personally sent it out to the county chairs myself. When we had our next general meeting on February 9th, it was unanimously passed by my committee here in Klamath County. That was a direct response to Tracy Honnell not doing her job. My experience is in management, and when we hire someone, we expect them to do their job. And when they don't, we submit corrective action. And that's what it was. It was corrective action from Klamath County. Now, I know other counties passed this or attempted to, and so it was a completely organic process. It wasn't started by Solomon Yu. He didn't write that. It was actually my first resolution, and I'm pretty damn proud of it. So that being said, I would like to touch on one more point on the petition to recall, and that is the insinuation that Solomon Yu has only reached success because of a connection to the CCP. Now, I personally find this offensive as the daughter of an immigrant who came to this country with no money and didn't speak English and didn't have an education. So just because he's an immigrant doesn't mean that he has connections to mafia or the Chinese Communist Party. That's like saying my mother came here and her success today is because of the Mexican mafia or Mistrese. It's simply untrue, and I don't use this word lightly, it's racist. So I just wanted to share that testimony with you. I hope that we can all come to the conclusion this petition to recall Committeeman Solomon Yu is bogus and subjective and hearsay and offensive. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Hi there, Ken Taylor, former treasurer for the Oregon Republican Party. Something came across my transom today about the recall petition for Solomon Yu, and I wanted to address that. The accusation was that he took $130,000 from the Art Robinson campaign, and it was taken illegitimately. Truth is, he didn't organize a PAC, he didn't own a PAC. Jim Bopp of Terre Haute did. Jim Bopp asked Solomon to take on the task of doing the type of campaigning that he does as far as organizing events, putting people together, bringing money into the coffers, all those kind of things. Getting people elected, Republicans elected. So this came before the executive committee. The executive committee heard Solomon's defense, said that James Bopp came to him, asked him to do these things. Solomon said, I can't do this for free. I'm going to have to put my business aside so I can do this, but I will do it, and I'll do it full time, and I'll do a great job for you. They made that agreement. Solomon did exactly that, did as he said. And it just so happens that Art Robinson had engaged with these PACs that belonged to Jim Bopp, and Solomon worked for him and was paid through the donations of other people, other campaigns, and to do the services that he does so well. So at the end of the executive committee meeting, or at the end of this discussion during that committee meeting, we decided there was no action to be taken. Solomon had acted ethically. There was no complaint. It was obviously something that needed to be put to bed, and it was put to bed. It's done, it's over, and it didn't happen the way Art has been telling people it did happen. So Ken Taylor, former ORP treasurer, served 2 terms, and proud to do it. Love everybody out there. God bless the ORP.
Hi, everyone. My name is Becky Mitz. I am a past secretary of the ORP. I was first elected in 2018 and served through February of 2023. I had the honor of serving under Chair Courier, Chair Hurd, Chair Bartssugar, and Chair Wong. I got to know Solomon right away as we sat next to each other at State Central Committee meetings, and we became friends. I would like to correct the false claim about Solomon causing dissent with Chair Hurd. This all centers around a State Central Committee meeting we had on February 5th, 2022. This was a very important meeting for Chair Hurd. He wanted to open our primary to non-affiliated voters. He invited his pastor, his father, his wife was there, and his young son was there for this meeting. He set up 10 speakers that were all in favor. 6 of those were by Zoom, and 4 of those were officials from West Virginia. West Virginia had opened up successfully their primary, and it helped the Republicans in that state. National Committeeman Yu was traveling back to Salem from Salt Lake City, where there was a RNC meeting, and got to the meeting, our meeting, late. But as soon as he got there, he wanted to speak to this issue. So they allowed him to have the time that he would have had for his National Committeeman report. He spoke about the differences between West Virginia and Oregon, such as West Virginia has a totally different culture. They're in the Bible Belt, and most of their citizens attend church, which Oregon does not have that culture, unfortunately. And also, West Virginia does not have automatic voter registration, and Oregon obviously does. I think the most impactful thing that National Committeeman Yu said was this: if the ORP was a church, why should our congregation allow a non-believer to choose our pastor to lead? So, while the NAV vote was being tallied, Chair Hurd stood up and requested the committee vote to release him from his oath to serve his 2-year term so he could explore running for governor. There was a lot of conversation about this, because if we voted yes, was that endorsing him? Because we don't endorse in the primary. Lots of questions. We ended up taking a poll on whether or not to vote to release him, and it went down pretty overwhelmingly. It was voted not to vote on whether or not to release him. About then, the vote on whether or not to adopt the rule to allow NAVs in our primary failed. 42 yeses and 69 noes. This proposition was defeated by the entire State Central Committee, but I'm grateful to Solomon, who saved Oregon from becoming an open primary state that day. I'm grateful for his leadership. I appreciate all he's done for Oregon, and I encourage you to vote no on the recall. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Barretto, and I served as Secretary of the ORP under Suzanne Gallagher, Art Robinson, and Bill Currier. I later served as Vice Chair and Executive Director, as well as National Committee Woman. I'm here to address the accusations of Solomon being behind the Marilyn Shannon recall. These are not only false, but Marilyn was her own worst enemy. While at an RNC meeting, I had 2 National Committee women approach me from New Mexico and from Washington, who had witnessed Marilyn telling NRA executive members that Solomon was a Chinese communist spy. Later, these same comments were repeated by Marilyn in the executive members-only lounge of the RNC. The concerns were that she was a liability because of her racist and defamatory comments, not only to the RNC, to the ORP. From these comments and from emails that they sent to the ORP regarding these comments, a grassroots effort from the state central committee members ensued. Solomon wanted nothing to do with the recall and had nothing to do with the recall. Thank you for your service to the ORP. I urge you to vote no against this recall.
Hello, Oregon Republicans. My name is Patty Lyman. I'm the RNC National Committee woman representing Virginia. I have practiced law for about 27 years, doing constitutional law. I worked for Jay Sekulow at the American Center for Law and Justice. And then I moved into immigration law, and I've spent the last 18 years representing largely persecuted Christians fleeing Islamic republics. I want to tell you what I know about Solomon Yu from working with him during this last 2.5 years. Solomon is first and foremost a patriot. He is the quintessential American in ways that I don't even know that a native-born American could be. He loves this country, he loves our Constitution, and he has proven it over and over and over again. On the RNC, he is a respected figure. He is a man who is a serious person dealing with serious issues of human rights around the world. He understands, from having grown up in communist China, he understands what it is to lose freedom. He sees us losing freedom in this country every single day, and he's never afraid to take the fight to the floor of the RNC to get us to make statements on behalf of our party that support our grassroots and support America. He was front and center on the resolution that we passed to force the People's Republic of China to pay reparations for the damage that they have done to our country through COVID. And as you all know, Solomon paid a steeper price than most of us for that COVID crisis. I work closely with him on the resolution that says we should, as a country, support Taiwan in the event that Taiwan is invaded by China. Not because we want to get involved in foreign entanglements or take care of other countries before us, but because we actually really have a strong national interest in protecting Taiwan, because they make about 80% of the computer chips that we need in the things that we use and drive every single day. On the Second Amendment, on every other issue possible, Solomon is a respected leader at the Republican National Committee. When he speaks, people listen. They care what he thinks. He has a very long-range view of what we have to do to save this country. And he has been representing you, the grassroots of the Oregon Republican Party, for almost 20 years at the RNC. There's a reason for that. Solomon understands a fundamental truth. We, as members, we do not represent the RNC or the chair to our grassroots and tell you what you're supposed to think or what you're supposed to support. It's the other way around. Solomon represents you, the grassroots, to the National Party. That's never been more stark than it was recently when we had our RNC chairman election. Solomon, along with about 1/3 of us, we stood firm with the grassroots, 100% of whom wanted new leadership at the RNC. I'm not surprised Solomon is being attacked now, but he can take it. He's willing to stand alone for the right thing, even when it's not popular. I cannot think of anyone that I respect more than Solomon Yu on the RNC. I will stand shoulder to shoulder with him, and Oregon Republicans, I'm asking you to do the same. You are so lucky to have him. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Roger Villery. I'm Republican National Committee man from Louisiana. I am the immediate past chairman of the Republican Party in Louisiana, and also past vice chairman of the Republican National Committee. I've served on just about every committee on the RNC, including the Executive Committee and the Bylaws Committee. I currently serve on the Grassroots Committee and the Site Selection Committee. For the record, I would like to state that Solomon Yu worked for the Republican Super PAC formed by Jim Bopp. Jim is a prominent attorney in Indiana and the past Republican National Committeeman from Indiana. Solomon was not the owner of the Super PAC, as was stated in the recall petition. Jim Bopp formed the Super PAC, and he formed them in Indiana because that's where his law practice was located, and Jim lived in Indiana. Jim formed the Super PAC, and he approached Solomon and I to work with him to build the Super PAC and work on campaigns. Jim's firm did all the legal and accounting work for the Super PAC. I was hired by Jim Bopp as the fundraiser for the Super PAC, and Solomon was hired as the media and targeting person for the PAC. Solomon had to give up his income from his glove manufacturing business to work full-time during the campaigns. So, of course, he was paid for his time and effort. Solomon never had anything to do with the donations, the fundraising, or the paying of bills. Solomon did opposition research. He did TV ads, mail pieces, etc. Federal law prohibits Solomon from contacting or getting in touch with the candidates or their campaigns, including the Art Robinson campaign. Thank you.
So let me address the false allegations or lies in the recall packet that Solomon fomented discord over in Baker County by refusing to sell tickets to the Freedom Banquet or a table to the Freedom Banquet to an appointed PCP named Kenny Hackett. See, the reality of this, and the screenshots that you saw where Solomon is saying, "Do not contact me again," is that I have a stalking protective order against Mr. Hackett. My mother has a stalking protective order actively in place against Mr. Hackett. He couldn't have attended that banquet if he'd wanted to. We would have called 911 and he would have been arrested. He's out on 2 years probation on 4 felony convictions last year where he served jail time over in Baker County. He has nearly a lifelong record of criminal activity spanning 2 different states. The most recent was actually the incident that happened at the Sunridge Inn in Baker City during our Baker County Republican reorganization meeting. The call from that has resulted, it did go to the DA's office, it is being prosecuted. He will stand trial for that sometime this summer, we just learned this week. Solomon was one of the witnesses to that incident at the Sunridge. So you can see how absolutely ridiculous it was for this man to start calling and texting. And Solomon was following law enforcement advice when he said, "Please do not contact me again." That's what happens when someone's harassing you. This is serious. Stalking protective orders involves multiple counts, multiple incidents of threats of physical violence. That's where we are with Mr. Hackett. Now, I watched this allegation, a screenshot of that specific page, be posted on the official Oregon Republican PCP page. And as some of you may know, one of the admins on that page was very helpful in putting together the recall petition document. And so, of course, that allegation of that page has stayed on there. But my response explaining the context of those screenshots was immediately deleted by that admin. So the UPCPs could not see the truth. This entire effort is completely disingenuous and just about as false as what I've just explained to you about that sheet. Thanks for listening.
Hello everyone, I am retired Lieutenant Colonel Joel Pulowski. I'm the chair of Marion County and a host on River Roundtable, a show on KSLM in Salem. I'm here to speak on an event that happened at Reawaken last year and is included in the recall petition. The reason why I was at Reawaken and saw parts of this event is because I was operating as media and as a member of the River Church, which was managing the event. All right, so what was this event? It wasn't Antifa, and it wasn't Target boarding up their windows. It was Don Powers. So let's talk about his statement. So this is the statement that Don submitted for the recall petition. And I'm going to read the highlighted yellow section right here. At one point, I saw Solomon Yu walk into the green room, which was the speaker's tent. So about half an hour, I went over and say hello. As I entered the tent, I saw he's sitting at a table with Carrie McQuiston. I walked over and said hello. So this establishes two facts. The first one is that Don initiated the event, and the second one is that Don traveled into the speaker's tent of his own accord. All right, well, why does this matter? Well, Don claims that when security asked him to leave the premises, he suspected it was Solomon's doing, as highlighted here in the pink. He also mentions Mark Thielman for some reason. The other idea is that right after, in this process, he sees security bring McQuiston and Solomon out to talk to them. I believe he's referring to Clay Clark and somebody else. Then he was informed that he was allowed back in and received his speaker's credential. Okay. So when Don walked into the speaker's tent, he did not have a speaker's credential. So that's the issue. And why is that an issue? Well, let's show you. So this is how it all breaks down behind the stage. There was a secure area, and to include the speaker's tent. There was armed security there because Eric Trump was coming, and they were concerned. As well as other VIP guests would be staying in the speaker's tent, some of which, if you remember back in April of 22, were quite controversial. I hung out mostly in the media tent, and I know several of the security guards, as well as a company that ran security. Actually, both companies, but that's okay. All right, so for Don to get in the speaker's tent, he had to pass through one of two security checkpoints and then another one at the beginning of the tent. All right, however he got past them is irrelevant. He did, and he did so without authorization. So that's why security was ticked, and they wanted him removed. It's just that simple. It's not a conspiracy. It's just violating the secure area. You don't have to do anything more. You don't have to cause a ruckus. You just have to walk into this area without permission, which Don did and admits to in his statement. So, sigh. This is just so ridiculous. Anyway, after this, he comes over and talks to me about 1:30, something like that, after I finished roundtable, and told me that Solomon tried to have him removed. I was like, who? I had no idea he was there. He told me Joe Altman saved. I have no idea who Joe Altman is. All right. So anyway, this is ridiculous to even be making this statement. So as a result, yes, Don was allowed to stay by the good graces of Clay Clark, okay, and by his own statement, he didn't stay long, so, okay, why is this even mentioned? Amazing to me. On a follow-up, though, yes, I did take the photos of Eric Trump, and this is how close I was when Eric embraced Solomon. So, yeah, it happened. I was there. And there's a lot more photos on my phone. So we'll just stop pretending this is all some made-up thing, all right? So thank you, and everybody have a great day. God bless.
Let's go back to effectiveness. Here's a list of all the individuals that Solomon has brought to Oregon to help secure fundraising. In addition to these, he was able to secure $10,000 each from private individuals for Kim Thatcher and Jeff Goodman. Again, Vote no on this recall petition. Thank you.
Hello, Republicans. My name is Nina Weber. I'm the Republican National Committee woman for the great state of Wyoming. There is a recall petition to remove my friend and colleague, Republican National Committeeman Solomon Yu. Why? Solomon was duly elected by a majority of the state Central Committee members to represent the will, values, and expectations of Oregon Republican voters. Solomon is a proud American who loves what our country was founded on and is fighting for conservative Republican values in Oregon, nationally, and internationally. Solomon continues to support, defend, and promote our Republican Party platform. How did I meet Solomon? In 2021, the majority of Wyoming Republicans voted to formally censure and demand the resignation of Representative Liz Cheney for failing to represent Wyoming and the political party of which she claims to be a member of, for casting her vote in favor of impeachment without any quantifiable evidence of high crimes or misdemeanors, for willingly joining forces and pledging allegiance to the Democrat Speaker of the House, for serving her own personal interest, and for referring to Wyoming Republican voters as a misinformed mob, radical extremists, racists, bigots. Cheney has violated the trust of her voters, and the Wyoming GOP censured her for her actions in 2021. I heard Solomon was bringing a censure for the member of Congress to the RNC meeting. That was unheard of. Solomon had the foresight and the leadership to think out of the box. It was a perfect fit for Wyoming to join on. Censuring Adam and Liz at the RNC meeting was a huge win for Republicans. Solomon was instrumental in helping the majority of Wyoming Republicans vote out Cheney. Solomon has an incredible reputation and is known for his detailed research and his ability to see past the Democrat-type ploys. The above actions from the former representative, those are valid reasons to bring a censure or even a resolution of condemnation or even a recall petition. Not the minor personality issues that every county, state, and even the Republican National Party is faced with today. We are better than that. And we can recognize these differences. These are what make the grassroots Republicans and our party more successful. I heard about the resolutions to hold the 10 Republican House members accountable, and I say outstanding. And thank you. Thank you for standing up to all the people in Oregon who are being lied to about what these people are doing in your towns and cities. And I think more RNC members should be taking his lead and defending our platform. Solomon is a true trailblazer who is unapologetically Republican. You know, he left communist China. He loves America and Republican values. We are truly blessed to have him on our team. I fully oppose this recall petition. Solomon Yu has my 100% full support as National Committeeman.
Hi, I'm Jeff Reynolds. I served as the chair of the Multnomah County Republican Party for 2 terms and on the executive committee of the Oregon Republican Party for the better part of a decade. In addition, I'm the co-founder of the Oregon Tea Party PAC. I had a front row seat for all of the internal workings of the ORP for many years. I want to talk to you today about the misguided recall attempt against the ORP National Committeeman, Solomon Yu. I want to tell you about the Solomon I know. When I was first elected chair in Multnomah County, I was green and I was lost. The Multnomah County Republican Party had been fined $10,000 2 years prior due to financial mismanagement and an activist Democrat Secretary of State that had marked us for destruction. We had $127 in the bank when I took office. Solomon played an instrumental role in coaching me up as a new county party chair, and more importantly, he helped me plan and execute our first Lincoln Day dinner in 4 years. He arranged a nationally recognized keynote speaker for us, and we brought in more money that night than we had raised in the entire 21st century prior. Solomon always struck me as an honest, forthright, and staunchly conservative man who held deeply personal principles. That's why it struck me so weird to hear a whisper campaign against him that had apparently gone on for several years. It's been going on since Bob Tiernan was chair of the ORP and accused Solomon of weird and unfounded conspiracies. These accusations have never changed, and no evidence of malfeasance has ever been offered, and yet they persist. Solomon was even accused by a sort of kangaroo court convened by another ORP chair, an ad hoc ethics committee. The charges in this current recall petition have not changed since the ethics committee made a report 7 or 8 years ago. No sanctions against Solomon were ever proposed by the executive committee after this sham report was submitted. I was there and I remember it well. Rehashing these baseless charges with no evidence whatsoever and no new information violates a vital tenet of the United States Constitution, the protection against double jeopardy. Having faced charges previously with no conviction, the accused cannot be harassed again with the same charges in a new court proceeding. Now, this is far from a criminal matter, but only in a banana republic can a political rival be harassed with charges until he is finally driven from the political scene. It would be well for the members of the ORP who will decide this matter to remember the spirit of the Constitution, which protects the citizens from government overreach. So too should those elected to political positions remain free from baseless charges already proven false. Thank you for your time.
Hey Oregon, this is Tyler Boyer, the National Committeeman from the key target state of Arizona, and by day I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Turning Point Action, one of America's largest grassroots operations in the country. We've been working hard and fighting with Solomon Yu and side by side with Solomon to hold the Republican Party accountable and to get the job done the way that's meant to be done, representing you, the grassroots at the RNC. I'm grateful for Solomon, his leadership, and for his support and mentorship as he's helped many of us, especially younger members, identify some of the problems and the key problems that have been at the RNC, and that we can carve a path forward or to move the ball down the field to win again here in the Republican Party. Grateful for Solomon. I hope you'll support him and we can move forward and win in 2024.
My name is Bruce Ash. I've served as Arizona's National Committeeman from 2007 until 2020. During my tenure there, I served as chair of the RNC Standing Committee on Rules from 2010 until 2016, the Resolutions Committee in 2009 and 10, plus helped form Republicans Overseas, as well as the Republican National Conservative Caucus, and the Conservative Steering Committee with Solomon Yu. Solomon Yu and I, along with a few others, worked together on many RNC initiatives and received praise from former RNC Chair Mike Duncan for being political entrepreneurs, for the work we performed on behalf of the Republican Party over a number of years, on the Resolutions Committee, the Standing Committee on Rules, and for our advocacy for rank-and-file Republicans across America, as well as members of the RNC taking on President Obama's administration. There have been two kinds of members at the RNC: social members who go along to get along and curry favor, which accounts for about 90% of the committee, and 10% of the members who do about 100% of the work. Solomon Yu is leader of the 10%. Solomon Yu stood up when few others would to corrupt RNC Chairman Michael Steele, who sought to line his pockets with political payoffs, as well as sought to sanction any member who questioned him. As a result of Solomon's work, a resolution of good governance was adopted, which benefited the committee and held all future chairmen to full accountability. Solomon Yu was Reince Priebus' campaign senior advisor each time he ran for chairman. In 2016, there was an attempt to shoehorn Paul Ryan to become our nominee in a brokered convention. Solomon Yu stood up to his longtime friend Reince and tried to prevent disenfranchisement of 24 million voters who had supported Donald Trump in various contested primaries. His Roberts Rules Amendment, with a simple majority, was later subverted by those who wanted to reject Trump's nomination because he wanted to make sure rank and file voters, and all convention delegates had a chance to vote. But he won the war because he forced the RNC to use rules with 2/3 majority votes to govern the 2016 convention. He stood up to the chairman of the party and showed great political courage. He protected Trump's nomination, and President Trump told me that himself. Politics is sometimes difficult to understand. While there was a legitimate political dispute at the time with the chair, Solomon also worked prior to the 2016 convention with Chairman Reince Priebus, preventing a disparate group from Colorado dedicated to Ted Cruz, who wanted to steal delegate votes from Donald Trump. Solomon Yu has frequently been the go-to member of the RNC, with chairs as diverse from Mel Martinez all the way through to Ronna McDaniel. They have called upon him whenever they needed a crucial vote. He has consistently rallied members around issues as diverse as the Electoral College, support for Israel, and pro-life. Solomon Yu is looked upon by his fellow members with great respect for his integrity, his institutional knowledge, and a sense of fairness, plus his love for our country. Without Solomon Yu, there would have not been a President Donald Trump. And without Donald Trump, the world would be a far different place today.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Kelly Ward, the former chairwoman of the Republican Party of Arizona, joining you from this beautiful place aboard a sailboat where I'm spending a lot of my time since I'm no longer a member of the RNC. I'm working from afar to save America, but there are people that want to save America from right inside the RNC, and one of the biggest patriots I know is Solomon Yu from the great state of Oregon. He's the National Committeeman, and I did tell him that I might get back into political mode, fix my hair, put on makeup, put on my political clothes to be able to do this video, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But I wanted to do a video for Solomon because it's so important. He is facing what so many America First patriots, MAGA patriots face when they're members of the RNC, and that is a recall. A ridiculous, uncalled for, embarrassing recall that needs to stop. I condemn this effort to recall Solomon Yu. In fact, I actually think that Solomon needs to stay on the RNC. He's not a yes man. He brings things to the forefront that sometimes members don't even want to talk about, but they really need to address so that the RNC stays powerful and stays effective in what they're doing. And so he's very important to have on the RNC. And so let's do the right thing. Let's keep him there, because keeping Solomon Yu is one of the ways that we're going to make the RNC great again. We're going to make America great again. And one of the ways that we actually are going to save our great country, save America.
My name is Charlie Kirk. I'm the CEO of Turning Point Action. I've been involved in the grassroots movement since 2012 when I started Turning Point. Turning Point Action has been pivotal in promoting conservative values and helping true Republicans get elected. This is why Solomon Yu has my full and total support for National Committeeman of Oregon. Solomon goes against the grain and votes for his principles when the majority continues to disregard and dismiss the grassroots. He's a strong advocate for Oregon and the RNC and a genuine patriot.
Hello, everyone, Oregon Committee members and fellow conservatives. My name is Sharona Bishop, and I am speaking today in my personal capacity in support of my friend Solomon Yu. I asked Solomon how I could help him after hearing about John Powers initiating a recall against Solomon as the committee man and reading Powers' words against Solomon, saying, "Once a communist, always a communist," in regards to Solomon Yu. I'm not sure how many of us realize that America is at war. Solomon does. Solomon's diligence to follow the actions of the real communists, the CCP, led to the exposure of the Madam Honeypot operations that were infiltrating the Trump base. Had it not been for Solomon, the CCP might have been able to bribe, blackmail, or worse, the inner sanctum of the America First movement. Diligence like this is why Solomon has been in leadership for so long. Solomon publicly stood with and defended the January 6 attendees' right to be at the People's House and to support our President, Donald J. Trump. Solomon was one of my first calls, actually, when my good friend Mike Lindell was running for RNC chair. He has been direct, honest, and actually helpful in the campaign in spite of supporting Harmeet Dillon in that particular race. Solomon wanted to make sure that we were given a fair shake, and even went the extra mile to alert us to timelines, potential supporters, and events that we were not made aware of by the RNC. I came to respect Solomon, and because he didn't try to schmooze us, he was frank and he was direct from the first conversation. I've come to realize that those who know that we are in a war might not be the best ones to remember your child's birthday or your parents' anniversary. They may not call you for small talk or be the best for dinner parties, because they are always planning the next steps, calling out the enemy, and finding a way to move us all forward to victory here in America. Right now, in your state of Oregon, the most aggressive anti-parent and anti-children laws are being passed. Aggressive legislation is leading to the mutilation and dismemberment of your sons and daughters, and yet here we are, having to use time, energy, and resources to overcome a phony recall effort of one of your own, at a time when all hands should be on deck to save your state and your children and your communities. The cannons are directed at one of the most faithful in fighting for conservative ideals and America first in our camp for over 30 years. You may disagree with me on the personality traits, but you cannot disagree with the actual history of Solomon Yu. He was raised in communist China. His family lived under fear and a regime that demanded self-hatred daily and allegiance 100% to this regime. Solomon spoke out at a young age about the idiocy of communism after he realized that milk was being poured in the ocean rather than given to the starving students and members in his community. He was sent promptly to a re-education camp, and his parents did not know what would happen to him. They had to hide their affection, hide their Christianity, and hide their shortwave radio that brought America to them every night. Solomon is not in the habit of defending himself. He is mission-focused, and he's looking for the pathway forward to freedom for all of us here in America. He voted for Reagan in his first election. He built his own home. He became a legal citizen and has lived the values that we conservatives and constitutional fighters declare that we believe in. Solomon is courageous. He is committed and faithful to America today as he was in 1992 when he declared his allegiance by oath of office. It is my opinion that this recall is wrong. We are at war, friends. And sometimes we're blinded by fear, and we react instead of thinking through and resolving to stay mission-focused for the return of the greatness of our country. Solomon is not the enemy, nor should he be facing a recall today. The callous words that launched this campaign, declaring Solomon a communist, deserve your attention and your concern. Solomon is a fighter. He has first-hand experience about the world that America is quickly descending into. He committed to conservative values and the America First agenda. He has shown that he's willing and able to work with anyone as he did with me. In this desperate time, we need people who may not know your favorite candy or the name of your firstborn, but you know that they will go to war to save our country. Solomon Yu, thank you for being that person. Let's get back to fighting the real enemy of freedom, of family, and of our faith. God bless you all and be with you as you make this decision.